Hello and welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. Many established and legacy brands and many entrepreneurs get locked into what's working for them. But how do you initiate change? You may come from a bigger company or have the newest and greatest idea, but what do you need to do to help move your internal team? It requires a certain amount of change leadership to implement that idea, push digital transformation, or simply change the ways we do business with our customers. It's something that comes up all the time, and navigating it can be one of the biggest hurdles you'll face in any job. Nancy Sherr is the EVP and Chief Marketing Officer of First Franklin Financial Corporation, a 75-plus-year-old financial services firm with 300-plus branch locations, primarily throughout the Southeast. And on this episode, we'll discuss the role of the CMO, change leadership, digital transformation, lead generation, local Facebook pages, Easter egg hunts, loans, Marcia Gay Harden, Sandra Bullock, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a CMO with a CSO, or Chief Shark Officer as you know me, on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would, tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Sure. So I started my career actually as a journalist, a TV broadcasting major, and my first jobs out of school were with local news stations. And actually, when I look back on it, it really was instrumental in developing my ability as a marketer to really be a storyteller, because that's what you do. And also being able to present information in such a way to where you get to the point or the hook up front, and then you provide the detail in the back end. But after a couple of years in that, I decided that I really didn't want to move to some small town in the middle of nowhere to get my career going. And I decided to really focus on advertising and marketing, and spent several years mostly in financial services. I took about a 10-year stint in the cable and telecom world, and now I'm back in financial services, all in marketing roles, mostly leading marketing for a product. And then most recently took on the role of Chief Marketing Officer at First Franklin Financial, which is a consumer finance company. And what's different about this experience, I think, than other places that I've been, is this customer segment is very different. I had been used to working in the prime and super prime customer segments, and this is a near prime customer segment. So a lot of the rules of the road and the things I've learned throughout my career as a marketer have pretty much been turned on its end, because this population is so totally different.
Sure. Well, so as your role as a CMO, I'm just kind of curious, at the time we're recording this, you've been with First Franklin for 2.5 years. This is something I think about, and I won't say this now that I'm talking to one, but joke about a little bit about the tenure of a CMO tends to be about that of a running back. How do you look at your own market today with life and tenure of a CMO today, and how you're judged and how the industry is judging CMOs?
So I think within this particular industry, it's fascinating to me. People who come to this company have been here for anywhere from 25 to 40 years at the executive level. And that's such a different way of thinking about things, because in marketing and as a CMO, it is definitely much more of a transient role.
Sure.
I think in this particular situation, the company has not even started to understand what marketing can do for them. I would say, in terms of a trajectory of where we are, we're probably at, a little bit above ground zero, and we have so much more to go as far as being able to demonstrate the value of marketing. That's particularly in the consumer finance industry. But I think for me, every day brings a new challenge, and I'm not bored. So I'm not really looking to move on, because I'm excited by what I am doing, and I'm excited about the impact that my team, can make to the organization. And we have seen definitely a shift within the organization as it relates to starting to understand what marketing can do for them. And we have just developed such a strong relationship with our operational partners who, I look at it like we are a service provider to them, and they have really been pleased to see what we can do to help drive the business.
And you have what, roughly 300 branches throughout the region?
Yes, 320 branches across 6 states.
It's an amazing statement to think of what you can now do with marketing. What do you attribute kind of to their success then?
This business is very much focused within rural markets,
Sure.
and the company has been extremely successful because it's been truly an old-fashioned face-to-face business. Our branch managers are so ingrained in the community. They know everybody, and whoever they don't know, they know somebody who knows them. So it's very much a relationship-based business.
Well, you've worked for some pretty sophisticated brands. I mean, there's several of these that I've worked with on some sort of either consulting engagement or in some capacity in marketing and business. But you've worked with JP Morgan Chase, you've worked with Time Warner Cable, Wells Fargo. I mean, these are pretty large, sophisticated companies that have some pretty well thought out processes, and it gives them a little more sophistication, if you will, as far as their level of thinking. How do you take what is even a well-run small business, if you will, but I'm sort of calling it that way, even a well-run family business, rather, is probably a better way of saying it, and be able to come in internally and help move them to make change? I think that's one of the things that I found difficult in either it was a small business or a family-owned business or somebody that's been doing something the same way as you said for 40 something years. It's not easy to move the needle internally. It's a lot easier to move the needle with the customers out there in the world, but let alone try to get somebody internally to understand it and then accept it and then move forward and fund it with an idea or some sort of leadership change you're trying to enact.
So, what you just stated is a challenge that I face every single day, and it's probably where I spend 90% of my time is educating the organization, whether it's educating at a leadership level
Yeah.
or educating all the way down to the
It's why
branch
I
level.
used to smoke.
Yeah. Well, I would say our what I've tried, the approach that I've taken specifically is try to find a friendly, so to speak, somebody who is a little bit more open to change,
Sure.
um, and take their openness to change. Say, look, why don't we try this? Why don't we see what it does for you? And what's nice about the business is it has been around for a long time, but we have regional operators who are very competitive with each other. And all of a sudden, if you get one little bit of success with one of the regional operators, suddenly everybody else wants to get on board. And we have found some of our operational VPs. Some of them are much more open to change, and those are generally who we start with first.
Mm-hmm.
But it follows very fast and very furious when something works. And for the most part, what I would say most of what we're doing is basic blocking and tackling, marketing 101.
Sure.
Stuff that you know in your core as a marketer is just how to do things the right way. So it's not like we're recreating the wheel or we're doing something incredibly new. It's what's old is new and it works. So let's start with that. Let's build momentum. And as you build momentum throughout the organization, you build trust and you build more openness to change. And that's the approach I've taken.
Yeah, it's. I find it so interesting that I tend to believe that I'm a fairly skilled marketer. I try to study anything and everything there is on this subject to help make businesses grow. And it's so often that I find that it's a lot more about a basic communication tactic and strategy that way and working with people than it is opposed to here's how I get 7 more likes on an Instagram post or something, silly like that doesn't matter towards making real change inside of a big organization. Then, you also, I know when we talked last week, we were also talking about the digital transformation. I know I made a joke about, for a lot of businesses, it's been sort of an analog to digital transformation. Talk about that transition and what you've seen when going from some of these places like Time Warner and Wells Fargo that most of the time are going to be on a more leading edge with technology than even a regional institution with 300 something branches.
So I would say when I first came to the organization, the lack of distribution of approach in acquiring new customers, to me, it just blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And our lack of anything in the digital space, it just, I didn't know what I didn't know. And instead of trying to do everything that I knew that we should be doing, I had to step back and say, okay, where are the things that I can demonstrate results and performance and I can gain momentum? Our our CEO had a passion for social media and really felt that the first place she wanted the organization to sort of dip our toe in or try out with social media. And, that is not where I would have started. I would have started, in my heart of hearts, I'm a direct to consumer marketer, and it's all about the data and the results and being able to link that back to, in our case, loan volume. And to me, that was the place to start for her was more in her heart, because there's a passion for the business and there's a passion for the customers with the family. And so, I was challenged with, well, let's do this. Let's do it the right way. Let's utilize best practices. But I also need to be able to create a story for our branches who in our organization actually fund all of the marketing dollars. So it's a pass through to my budget. So everything that we do needs to be able to turn back to how many loans did I get out of this? And in a channel like social media, it was definitely a little bit more challenging. So social media is where we started, and being able to link that to results was probably the biggest challenge. But something unexpected happened. And instead of spending our time in marketing linking what was happening to results, the branches suddenly got behind the fact that they had a Facebook page and they could post things. We're in these very hyper local markets.
Right.
So the Easter egg counting contest, they were really excited that they could post that on social media and their customers could put likes on it and make comments about it. So
did you have a Facebook page for every branch?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and actually managing it was at first when I was like, oh, that's going to be a lot of work. But actually managing it, from an ad platform perspective,
right.
we can push all the ads out. There's some localized marketing that we can do at a state level. But we also I have a person on my team who part of their job is the branches send in requests. We screen them for what they want to post on Facebook. And they post everything from the First Franklin coloring book contest to come to the branch and donate supplies for kids' backpacks who are underprivileged, to the Easter egg counting contest, you name it. And they are extremely creative. And given the size of my team, which is very small and nimble, there is just no way that we could support 320 branches with corporate-wide promotions every single month around doing something kind of fun and interesting to bring in customers. It just isn't feasible within our current infrastructure. So this was a way for the branches to feel like they were part of the marketing, to feel like they were driving
Such
customer business.
Point. Yeah.
And I think, instead of my mindset of, well, it's about dollars in, loans out. Like it's got to be in this very structured kind of way, which is really, it's my background. Um, it was a great initiative to allow the hearts of our branch employees to come through and the spirit of our company, which is really about people and relationships.
Yeah, that's such a great point because sometimes social media, I mean, should always, everything we do should always be focused on the customer in my brain. But at the same time, sometimes the customer is also just the employee. You need to be engaged. And hey, if there's a tool, something as simple as a coloring book contest or an Easter egg hunt, hey, albeit it's just, I would hate to be the person that had to look at 300 different Easter egg hunt local photos and then put them out there. So that's a lot of tagging. But
Yes.
well, other than social media, what other things did you run into as part of that digital transformation process that really stood out to you?
Well, I mean, in the last 2 years, we've reskinned the website. I mean, our
Sure.
website looked like it was, the out of the box kind of website, and extremely outdated. So we were able to kind of modernize that and increase our SEO and make it a more efficient website. And actually, now we're on our next skinning of it, so to speak. I would call it a refresh,
Sure.
which is even meant for more SEO. And of course, we went into digital. And what was nice is, so we had this momentum behind us with social media. And while the branches were active participants within the marketing, and we were still able to demonstrate the likes, the shares, the cost per clicks, and even have a little bit of tasteful, appropriate lead gen within social media, track that through to applications and loans. So there was some numbers behind it, but honestly, the only people that really, the operations weren't about the numbers. They were about how engaged they could get with their pages, their Facebook. So it was more of a checkpoint for us within marketing, make sure that we were spending the dollars appropriately and optimizing them for the behaviors that we were looking to see and building awareness. Although the company's been around for 79 years, our awareness is not very high when you poll our prospects, because they're more than likely people that our branches don't know. So we are certainly keeping aware of those types of metrics. But then going into search and display advertising was pretty, the hurdles that I had to go through from a business case perspective were very minimal compared to pretty much every other organization that I've worked at. A lot less, in a smaller organization, you have a lot less people looking over your shoulder.
Sure.
You have a lot less checkpoints that you need to go through. It's a conversation. I report to the CEO, and
Right.
I think, as a marketer, I didn't know what I didn't know, and coming into this organization, I don't think that the team would be as successful if we weren't directly reporting to the CEO.
Absolutely.
And I would say, if I were to ever take on another role as a chief marketing officer at another organization, the reporting structure would be definitely very critical from my perspective, because there's just a lot of red tape and a lot of discussions that I don't need to have, and I don't frankly have the time to have because of my reporting structure.
Yeah, and especially if you think about some of the larger banks now today, and it's not necessarily it has to be the larger ones.
Mm-hmm.
So many of the ones that have different consulting teams that are brought in,
Yeah.
then that becomes a whole other mess to deal with. Talk about how you look at the media mix, because we talked a little bit about search and social, but how do you sort of look at all of the channels? Because especially when you're in a local town, I mean, it's very easy to localize everything digitally, but how do you sort of look at that entire mix for 300 plus locations over an infinite number of channels today?
Yeah, I would say our strategy as it relates to localization is evolving. With when I came into the organization, we were just doing direct mail, and yes, we do have 320 different versions of direct mail that have a specific branch manager's signature and address and phone number.
Mm-hmm.
So we are starting to evolve that process. We're doing media buys and out of home that cover multiple branches. It's much more efficient. So from branch perspective, they're spending less money per branch. And we're able to, in a very fluid way, be able to provide prospects choice and breadth of choice. So you're not just the First Franklin Financial in the strip mall next to the
Exactly.
Bilo. You're First Franklin Financial, who has 40 branches in the state of Louisiana, and is a powerhouse. When maybe powerhouse is a stretch, but is a strong regional player who has more than just one branch and can serve my needs as a consumer. So we've been evolving. Digital is obviously, we can in the social media space, we can be very targeted from a geo perspective, as well as in search and display. But our strategy in search and display is to drive customers to, a phone call or apply online, and have them look at and choose their local branch. So we enable the customer to choose where they want to go versus us telling them this is your local branch. And by doing so, the customer realizes when they go through the process of choosing a branch that we have multiple branches within a given area. So we're not just a one store loan shop.
Talk about what that face-to-face interaction means to a banking and financial institution, because you talk about trust. I mean, trust has got to be the most important, 5-letter word at any sort of financial institution when trying to convince somebody. And so much of that, it's almost like a marketing and sales enablement process for how you deliver leads, if you will, to your branches, and that handoff, if you will, between marketing and the person who's establishing that face-to-face relationship with your customers today.
So our tagline, so to speak, although it's not officially, is, you're part of the First Franklin family. And when you walk into our branch representatives treat you like family. When I first started at the organization, before I moved to the home office location, I worked out of a branch. And every single person that walked into that branch, you could just see their body language change.
Mm-hmm.
They would come in, they're down on their luck, they needed some help. There's a big fear factor that comes into our business. People are afraid they're going to get turned down. It's a risk.
Yeah.
There's a lot of psychology behind that. And you can I literally saw the physical transformation of a customer when they would walk in. The branch representatives would welcome them, offer them some water, let them have a seat, talk about their financial situation, and offer up a solution, a reasonable solution that could help them.
Exactly.
And you could see their shoulders come back, their heads come up, the smiles. When I worked out of the branch, we had customers bringing our branch representatives gifts and baskets and homemade goods all the time. The depth of relationship that these representatives establish with the customers is not like anything I've seen. Having worked in the big financial institutions and with the customer base too, you have to think about, what is it that my customer base needs? Our customer base skews older than average. We're in rural towns, and everybody talks about digital transformation. It's important to have a digital transformation that aligns with your customer and your target base. And when you're working in the prime and super prime lending space in highly urban markets, the need to have strong digital touch points, fluid customer experiences within the digital space, it's it's a requirement. It's not optional. It's a requirement. You have to be able to operate that as a business to be successful. But in a hyper local rural market with the types of customers we have, we do have to quote unquote have digital capabilities, but we don't have to be as sophisticated as a Wells Fargo or a B of A or a JP Morgan Chase. The needs of our consumers aren't there. And frankly, many of them are afraid of technology and they don't trust it. So our branch representatives spend time explaining the benefits to them, like managing their account online or being able to pay online, because a lot of our customers like to come to our branch to pay their bill, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
We have a very large percentage of our customers who do that because their friends work in the branch. And when I say their friends, it's not really their friends, but they feel like they're their friends and they want to come by and say hi. And that's a different mindset than the big banks who are looking to cut servicing costs
Right.
and push their customers to service themselves online. And when you have a base that's willing to do that and you're not sacrificing customer experience because that's what they want to do, then that's okay. But for us in our business, because face-to-face has been the cornerstone of our business, we need to embrace that, appreciate it, enable digital capabilities when our customers want it, but it's not a key driver of our business in the way that it is with the large financial institutions.
Well, even with the large financial institutions and what they suffer, I mean, it's most of America, what you're describing. I mean, it's not a bunch of troglodytes running through a certain part of the country that doesn't know how to use mobile banking. I mean,
Right.
it's what most America goes through, and I think it's a lesson for all marketers. I wish that more marketers started out in their 20s, not necessarily only at agencies, but maybe started out, in your case, at a financial institution, at a branch, so that they could really see how to deal with a customer and never forget those lessons that they will learn. But unfortunately, not enough of us have done that. So you've worked in telecommunications and cable as well. Compare how you looked at experience there versus how you look at it today in a financial institution, because neither vertical is necessarily known for having just the greatest customer experience in the world.
That's
I'm trying to
an
be polite.
understatement.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's just say, coming from financial services and the big financial services organizations working, in credit card and mortgage marketing, which are really, I would say, on the scale in terms of sophistication of marketing, targeting, analytics, etc. That's where it's at from a especially if you're a data-driven marketer like I am.
Mm-hmm.
Going into telecom, the CMO at the time said, well, we are actually trying to recruit people from banking because we want to bring in that sophistication of marketing. I would say is your point around customer service. When I was at Time Warner Cable, we had it's horrible. We had the worst customer satisfaction ratings in the industry and of any other industry that was being rated at the time. And I think as an organization, it really caused us to look inwards and say, okay, we're bad and we know we're bad. And we're going to fix it. And we're going to tell our customers, you know what, you're right, we are bad and we're going to fix it for you. And we did a whole campaign around it, but it was really very interesting, I'd say, from a marketing perspective, to kind of see that transformation and the things that we did. But it is an industry that is just not known for its service, whether it's at the point of customer contact, whether it's delivery of the products. And there was a lot of work done at the time to improve our infrastructure and improve that customer experience. Coming from financial institutions, knowing that that was also an issue there, coming to this role, I was ready for the poor net promoter scores. And something I mentioned earlier, when you asked me about my background, even though I'm in financial services again, I feel like consumer finance is very different.
Oh, absolutely.
Our net promoter scores are higher than any other company I've ever worked for. It is unbelievable how high they are. And our customers love us, and they love us because we have a relationship with them and we treat them like family. And we might not have the best processes and procedures. We may not be as sophisticated as some of the other consumer finance companies out there. But when a customer walks into our branch and is at the lowest of their lows, and they walk out of the branch knowing that there is hope and there is somebody willing to help them, that's what we do. Yeah. And that's why we have the net promoter scores that we have.
So how do you look then at really lead generation? And, as a kind of a twist on that as well, or as a follow-up to that, how do you look at that cross-sell, upsell opportunity? You alluded to it earlier, but really understanding that you're still needing to drive customers to the bank. How do you look at that strategy behind sort of a lead generation strategy for a financial institution?
So like I mentioned, we have very strong customer satisfaction, and the numbers show it. We see north of a 70%, some areas are higher than that, north of a 70% renewal rate with our current customers. So from a lead gen perspective, part of what we do is we remind our current customers that we're here. We do that through your traditional tactics, but when you bring in prospects, it's part of that is bringing the prospects in and getting them interested. But the main thing that we want to do is get them in touch with a branch as soon as possible, because once they have that interaction, whether it might start on the phone, it might take a little while for them to get in the branch, but what our branch representatives do, we can't do that in marketing. Marketing helps drive the opportunity to them, and they convert it.
True. Nancy, you're on a Shark's perspective. I ask this of all my guests. You're not that far from the beaches in the Carolinas, but I ask this of everybody because you're on a Shark's perspective. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
Oh. Well, Kenneth, as we spoke before, I do not have an affinity for sharks. Although you're my favorite shark.
Thank you. Good answer.
Because I think you're a really interesting guy.
Well, that's it. We'll leave it at that. That was one of the best answers I've ever heard. All right. So okay. It's a special time in my show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
Sure. I don't know that my answers will be interesting, but I'm ready for the questions.
All right. For number 1, customer experience in the financial services industry or customer experience in the cable telecom industry?
I'd say that's the lesser of two evils.
Sophie's choice.
Right. I would go with financial institutions because as individuals, I feel like there's a little bit more on the line from a performance perspective. So people are maybe a little bit more cognizant of the value of a good customer experience.
Fair enough. Number 2, the beaches of North Carolina or the beaches of South Carolina? You lived in both states, so I'm assuming you've seen both.
I would say South Carolina, but I'm a Miami girl, so I'd say Miami too.
All right. Well, number 3, you look like the love child of the two of them, but Sandra Bullock or Marcia Gay Harden?
Sandra Bullock.
All right. Number 4, a personal loan or debt consolidation?
debt consolidation.
Interesting. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Oh, biscuits.
Thank you. Somebody that's truly in the South that knows. So, Nancy, where can people find out more about you, keep up with what you're doing, learn more about First Franklin, and more?
Oh gosh, well, I guess you could find out more about me on LinkedIn and First Franklin at our website, www.oneffc.com.
Perfect. Nancy, thank you so much again for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Great. Thank you, Kenneth. I appreciate it.
So there was my conversation with Nancy Sherr, the EVP and Chief Marketing Officer of First Franklin Financial Corporation, a 75-plus-year-old financial services firm with 300-plus branch locations, primarily throughout the Southeast. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with her. First, she's been involved with something that a lot of us face, and that's how to implement change. You've got this great new idea, but you're coming up against a legacy of thought, if you will, that doesn't move so quickly to accept change. And this is true not only for old companies, but also new ones when somebody is stuck in a mindset. You spend much more time trying to push change than what the actual change takes to implement. And often the internal change is much harder to push than how your customers may change already with you. She said that it's what she spends 90% of her day on, and she's the CMO. I like her plan, though, with finding an internal advocate, if you will. Find an opening, build momentum, and then build trust. That's a simplistic explanation, but it's so often about building momentum in order to make something happen. And remember, too, that part of this goes to your reporting structure. You may have a great relationship with a boss, but if your boss can't help you make changes, then, well, that's an issue, too. Work on getting the ear of someone who can help you make the change necessary. I've screamed and yelled a lot for change many times and then convinced the boss ahead of me to accept the change, but then they're unable to push past them and it feels like time wasted. You've got to work through your boss, but just be smart about getting the right ear. Second, great point in technology and digital transformation for both employees and your customers and how they're both affected. It's easy to think about digital transformation as one flavor for a tech upgrade, but not every audience needs or wants the same kind of transformation. So make sure not to sacrifice customer experience. As Nancy said, they leverage digital transformation to enable digital capabilities when our customers want it. Third, never underestimate what the power of a local social media page can do for your local employees. I love the example of the local Facebook pages for the local branches. Those can be of real value to local employees. Sometimes it's as much about employee engagement as anything else. And Nancy said, and I quote, "So this was a way for the branches to feel like they were part of the marketing, to feel like they were driving customer business." We think so often about the global view of a brand social media, but it's so important to think local social, especially when you're talking about people and relationships that are there and local. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Stay safe, be well, and make relationships that count. Join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.